Matt, will this new broadcast rights deal end up being a good thing for NASCAR given where we are in the streaming era? And do you believe fans might have some trouble keeping up with all of these new changes?
Yeah, it's a big change. Good evening, everybody. Streaming, we've talked about this for a while. When is NASCAR going to make this streaming switch? Finally, it's happening not next year, 25. We may as well be next year. We're almost at Christmas, aren't we? But it's coming. Big chops off the end of the Fox season and the beginning of the NBC season to what we've been used to over the last handful of years. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in terms of on-screen, commentary teams and pit lane reporters and all that kind of jazz going on. That'll all be hashed out, I'm sure, over the next 6 to 8 months. But yeah, big news for NASCAR. Good for them to get it out before the end of this year. And we've got obviously the celebrations in Nashville going on over the weekend as well. So good to get this out. And it's the best of both worlds, isn't it? You've got all your practice and qualifying, as you mentioned there, Ben, on the streaming services, with the races still being on the telly for the good chunk of the year with the Fox stuff and the NBC at the back end with the playoffs. So it's a bit of a mishmash. I'm sure lots of people have got a Prime subscription as well as obviously having the cable stuff too. So hopefully it's not going to cause too much of a headache, but all of the fans that have been, it's on this channel at this time are going to have to get their head around it being a bit all over the place for the beginning, but hopefully that won't take too long to get straight, and everybody will know where they are and where they need to be watching from.
Yeah, I know a lot of fans are going to be upset that some of the races are going to be on a streaming service, no matter what that service is. And I mean, you go look at the NASCAR Facebook comments every time the race is on cable, okay, let alone putting it on a streaming service. I think that, I can certainly understand fans, not wanting to, just where we're going in general, all the passwords you got to remember, all the different prices you got to keep up with, and, how you budget all that. I get all of that. But I do think that if NASCAR was going to go down this path, Amazon and formerly HBO Max, now shortened to just Max, I think those are probably objectively the two best services you could possibly be on. And let me just tell you why. The last stats and numbers when it comes to total subscribers for Amazon Prime Video, 205 million. All right, Max has 76.8 million. What are IndyCar fans having to deal with now with NBC having the full season and deciding after a couple of years of putting one race exclusively on Peacock, now we're going to have two next year? Do you know how many subscribers Peacock has? 28 million. That is barely 1/3 of what Max has. And as we mentioned, the Max races will still be simulcast. They're simulcast on Max, airing on traditional cable with TNT as well. So it's not even an exclusive deal when it comes to that. If NASCAR had gone down the IndyCar path and said, okay, Peacock will give you, NBC will give you a couple of Peacock exclusive races here, then I could really start to see some valid criticism of that, because at least at the moment, who knows where the streaming landscape is going to be. And I heard the guys on the morning drive talking about this morning, Pete Pistone saying, ESPN's probably going to go direct to consumer in a couple of years, maybe by the time this new TV deal starts. We don't know where we're going to be at the end of this deal in 2031, but here in 2023, as we look ahead to 25, I don't think Peacock is big enough yet to justify a move like that. I do think Amazon Prime and Prime Video, and when you look at what they've done with the NFL and Thursday Night Football, I do think they're big enough to be the one to test these waters here, and we'll see how it goes. If the numbers are absolutely terrible and tank, maybe we made this move a little bit too soon. But if you look at the subscriber base and you look at the NFL's relationship with Amazon, how they've been able to activate that, and even doing the Black Friday game that they just did this past week here, I think there's a lot of potential for this. And I think, again, if we were going to go down this path, who better than a partner like Amazon, who's been long rumored to be in these discussions here to make this partnership happen and to test the waters in this streaming era. Behind the mic, Matthew Owens, good to see you in the chat, saying major increase in the TV money is definitely a good thing. Absolutely. And I think that further speaks to the strength of this deal. It's no secret that NASCAR's ratings since the last deal was negotiated, I suppose at the end of 2013, from the start of the 2015 season, we talk all the time on these shows how the ratings are just not what they used to be. So for NASCAR to still be able to bring in more money through the TV contracts and revenue there, I think is absolutely a massive victory. So it's probably not perfect. And again, in the eyes of a lot of fans, it's going to be a hassle to keep up with, practice and qualifying being on a different network. But that's not unprecedented. I remember when I was growing up, sometimes we'd get into the ESPN portion of a season and Speed Channel would still be doing some practice and qualifying broadcasts. I know it hasn't really been the case since Fox and NBC have kind of split the season in half here, but again, I don't think that it's entirely an unprecedented sort of deal either. And I think if fans are truly dedicated, it's easier than ever. You just Google what channel is the race on today, or go to NASCAR's website, and you'll get the answer there for you as well. Matthew Owens also adding Amazon is a great choice. By the time this starts for NASCAR, Amazon will have 3 seasons of broadcasting the NFL in their pocket. Good for NASCAR not to be a guinea pig with Netflix or Hulu, etc. And ESPN Plus, I'll also, since you brought up Hulu as well, Matthew, with the Disney partnership and everything, ESPN Plus is, I think, in a similar subscriber range to Peacock. So I would not have been a fan of them getting an exclusive race either. I don't think that streaming a streaming service like that is big enough either. Nick P says people want Alan Bestwick back to do NASCAR. I know Matthew certainly does. He's here in the chat right now. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But again, I was just thinking about this, earlier today as well. Larry McReynolds was doing Fox Sports coverage the first, whatever it was, 13, 14 races of the year, and then TNT would come in and he'd do their broadcast as well. I think Matt Yoakum used to do the entire season for Fox and NBC back in their first splitting of the season from 2001 to 2006. So, again, that's not unprecedented either for networks to kind of share on-air talents and everything. I remember Rick Allen was doing the NASCAR America studio shows while he was still in his final year doing the Truck Series broadcast with Fox. So, that'll be a very interesting conversation to have at a later date as well. But I think Alan Bestwick, unfortunately for us as NASCAR fans, I think he's very happy with what he's doing right now with UConn's women's basketball team and doing SRX in the summer. So I don't know, as much as I would love to see him back, how realistic that option necessarily is there. So, Matt, I don't know if you have any further thoughts on this. Otherwise, we can move on.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say quickly before we moved on, and Matthew Owens pointed out in his comment before, me and Kobe had a quick chat before that we went on air. Amazon is a key as the stream, because I don't think you could have had it on Disney Plus or Netflix or maybe even Apple TV, because they don't do live things, do they? Really, there is very little live stuff. Amazon, as you say, have got the NFL. They've had Premier League here in the UK as well over the last couple of years. We've got a Premier League Amazon week coming up in a couple of weeks' time, where all the games in 1 week are on Prime. So I think that was, if it was going to go to anybody, it was going to go to them.
Yeah, Apple has the Major League Soccer season pass, so that's a very experimental deal there, and it's not included in Apple TV. There are some games that are free. Well, I say free. If you have an Apple TV subscription, you don't have to pay any extra to watch a handful of games every week. But if you want every team, every match, every week, there's a season pass that's an additional cost to the Apple TV subscription, which, by the way, I just got an email that my Apple subscription is going up from $7 a month to $10 a month. So I'm not too happy about that. I certainly wouldn't be too happy if they did like a NASCAR season pass. Let's say Apple was interested in buying the entire Truck Series schedule, but you had to have a NASCAR Trucks pass to watch all those races on Apple. I don't think that would go over very well. So I think, like we said, Amazon probably the best candidate there. Matthew saying, don't be surprised if Amazon goes into using NBC people. That's what they did with the NFL, getting several names there, including the great Al Michaels. I would expect Amazon to continue that relationship. Well, I know you'd be happy, Matthew, because I know Rick Allen's your favorite broadcaster, so that would mean more of him.
So, I mean, Amazon have got that first half of the year, though, when it's Fox races. So surely you're not going to have 2 lots of groups on site doing the same qualifying and then switching for the rest. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point, though, as well, because it goes Fox and then Amazon and then Turner. And
then switches in the middle.
And then, over to NBC. Right. So, again, that'll be a very interesting conversation that I'm very much looking forward to seeing how that breaks down. But of course, like Kobe mentioned, just an hour before we came on air, we got this news confirmed. So everybody's still reacting to the TV networks news itself. Who's going to be on air for the networks? We'll figure that out at a later date, I'm sure.
To quickly mention as well, before we move on to the next part of this story, and I know, as you just mentioned, it's only come out in the last couple of hours. Very interesting to see what they do internationally, of course, waving the flag from the UK here, because we're still not entirely sure what we're getting next year, let alone in 25 onwards, because there's some rumblings about Viaplay and the fact that they're pulling out of. Well, Josh reported this in the summer that this was potentially happening on the show. They have a contract, but what that's going to do is interesting. Will NASCAR take their international broadcast back in-house and dispense it that way, a bit like a Game Pass kind of situation, as you mentioned before, where or Supercar Superview is the best example you can have of this, where you're outside of Australia and you can get it through the YouTube channel or wherever else. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do internationally with all these different broadcasters now, and the fact that, as I say, in the UK, we really don't know where we're going to watch the Daytona 500 in February coming up, let alone this time next year.
I still love the irony of some of the reporters the first year that Peacock had the exclusive Toronto race for IndyCar and talking about how Peacock wasn't available in Canada. And you're in the media center trying to pull the race broadcast up, and you can't do it because the streaming service isn't available in that country.